I'm Reverend Phil, and I'm your host for Words of the Prophets. Where are our prophets now? Where are those messages God chooses to communicate divine revelation through? In the past, the Creator has sent prophets like Abraham, Siddhartha, Jesus, Muhammad, and many more. Maybe our higher power has switched tactics since we reinterpret God's words as soon as the Creator's prophets leave us. Could it be that Spirit talks to each one of us individually and we haven't learned to listen? On Words of the Prophets, our modern prophets show us how to find the internal prophet that is the I Am, and we discuss the application of spiritual principles in all aspects of our lives. Love and light, everybody. I'm Reverend Phil, and I'm your host for Words of the Prophets. Today my guest is my good friend Chris Griscom, who's the founder and head of the Church of the Sanctuary of Light, the Nizoni School for Global Consciousness, and the Light Institute of Galisteo. Welcome.
Welcome, Diane. It's great to be here.
Great to have you back. So today's prophetic topic is Designers of Our Destiny, Part 2. We did Part 1 back in May, and we're going to review a little bit of what we did in May and then keep on going. And this is all about Chris's book called Psychogenetics, The Force of Heredity. And we have a topic that comes from that book, which was Designers of Our Destiny, and that's found on page 39, which is chapter 3. The sentence reads as follows: "We are not victims of our bodies, we are instead the designers of our destiny." So for the people who are watching who weren't here in May, shame on you. Let's start with, how did you come to write this book?
Oh, those stories are so long. But one of the things that I recognized is that whether we speak to our family, whether we're disconnected to them, we carry the legacy of our great-great-grandparents, and we design our world dependent on the experiences they had. In other words, our genetic information is encoded by their experiences. And so I felt that it was very important for us to begin to explore that so that we could disconnect any of the smallness or the negativity or the limitation of our great-great-grandparents and our family constellation, and instead activate what we have inherited from them that belongs to us, which is unlimited information, unlimited capacities in terms of our physical body, our emotional body, and our spiritual body. So psychogenetics is a way of recognizing that we are not the victims of our bodies or our parents or our worlds.
How about we define the two terms, psycho and genetics?
Great.
And then we can put them together.
Okay. So when we say psycho, we think of often you think of the movie, but
yeah,
I'm thinking
of, yes.
yeah. Well, sometimes it does look like that in humanity. Aren't we killing each other? But psychology, the psyche of human consciousness, the emotions that we carry consciously and unconsciously. And genetics, of course, relates to that invisible world, which we think of as genes and chromosomes, that design the web or the pattern of our possibility. What kind of a body do we have? And so psychogenetics means that what we inherit, our genetic information, includes emotional DNA, spiritual DNA, as well as physical DNA. And that's why it's so important to see ourselves and look at our family constellations from that perspective so that we can shake ourselves loose from what really doesn't serve us today, because the world is changing so much, as you know, Reverend Phil.
How does psychogenetics and karma interact?
That's a fascinating question. When we say the word karma...
Let's define karma.
All right.
Go ahead.
I would say karma is a really easy thing to understand. It's simply cosmic law. It means cause and effect, action and reaction. Whatever you think or do or move within ripples out. And all great religions have understood this, whether they called it karma or not, even science, and comes back to you. So karma means that you are influencing the world around you on every level.
So karma is, we're talking cause and effect. You mentioned science, Newton's third law of motion. For every action is an equal and opposite reaction.
Exactly. And, of course, what's interesting about that is that we often use the word karma talking about the negative aspects. Oh, you did wrong, so you're going to be punished, or you're going to get it in the face, or something like that. And what I mean about that is by using your consciousness and trusting who you are, the best of who you are, the divine that you are, you can create a ripple out that brings back to you something that supports your life, not only your life, but the purpose of your life, or that which you have to give to your family, to your society, to the world.
So, psychogenetics is a vehicle that carries the karma.
It allows us to explore points of reference that relate to what we've created in terms of ourselves from the level of change, to reinvent ourselves, to understand that karma is not frozen, cause and effect is not frozen, and therefore choice is not frozen. We can reinvent who we are. We are not stuck with our genes or chromosomes or stuck with what happened to our parents.
So karma brings us to a place in time where we get to, for lack of a better term, meet ourselves.
Oh, beautifully said.
And then we've got the choice, what do I do with it? Do I bemoan it, become the victim, or do I say, wait a second, I don't like where this is headed, I'm going to do something different?
Yes, and that very much is how we've been trained, because we have been trained to think of ourselves as the victim. It's delicious to be the victim. If you're the victim, it's not your fault. No one's going to blame you. You can hide behind a mask that says, it's not my fault, I'm not successful, or that I couldn't attain my dreams. Whereas in actuality, when you come to know yourself, you can begin to say, I can do that. I am like that. Now how do I apply that to change my world?
So let's go on to this victim versus volunteer.
Love it.
I choose in spirit, in soul, the course of this life and the potential for the lessons I want.
You do. Now what happens is that you didn't just start from one point of reference and said, I'll look down at this life and I'll design this. You have infinite lifetimes and imprints that you've inherited way back in your family line, the family chi, that are influencing the way that you learn those lessons. And that's why I wrote that book, to unveil to you, to become aware that you don't have to relive your great-great-grandparents' existence, but that you can choose in such a way as to actually design or redesign something that supports you.
But initially, did I not choose to have those grandparents, to have all of that?
Yes, but there's a wonderful thing. It's called free will.
Exactly.
We design the blueprint. I need to learn about love or compassion or caring or expanded consciousness or whatever it is. How we learn that usually is on an automatic pilot and comes from all those experiences of our great-great-grandparents, the culture that we live in, what we have inherited from our own parents, if we are not aware. But when we begin to pick apart and say, well, I'm learning this lesson, we begin to realize that we are designers of our destiny, because we can learn the lesson with humor. We can learn the lesson with power. Power is, okay, I just got my nose rubbed in it, something terrible happened to me. What is the gift? I will use it, it will not use me.
How much of all of what you're saying, this, I'll call it advanced spiritual use of free will, can happen without a spiritual practice?
Spiritual practice is a way of focusing our consciousness, so it helps us to choose. But, you know, we are intelligent beings. We grow through our experiences. You keep repeating and repeating a negative habit. I call genetics just a habit. And at some point, the light goes on and you you realize this is too painful, it's too small. And like the snake shedding its skin, you leap up to the next level of awareness as to who you are. And so spiritual practice simply speeds it up. Any kind of spiritual practice, especially those that affect the brain. Like
so
meditation.
This can be achieved by people who have a minimal or non-existent spiritual practice.
Absolutely.
They can recognize that something is or isn't working for them.
That's one of the reasons I wrote the book Psychogenetics, because you could have no access to the word spirituality. You might be entranced into religion, or I have no God at all, I'm just here on the treadmill. But what happens with psychogenetics is that you begin to see a bigger picture of who you are, and you begin to relate to your life from your inner self rather than your outer self. And that's what begins to free you and speed your own evolution. So I attempted to I think everyone can think about their great-grandparents and say, what did I get from them? What did they give to my grandparents, to my parents? What did my uncle contribute to my sense of self? All of us can relate because we're either not relating to our families or we're intertwined with our families. And so it's something that's very immediate. We go, aha, I got that sense of humor from my aunt. I got that pessimism from my father. And then once you've seen that pattern, that's when you can step in without even using the word consciousness and say, I'm not going to live your life, Dad. I'm going to live my own. And once we start to do that, we stop projecting onto our parents and our grandparents, and we become peaceful. And we have the power to say, I am myself. I'm not who you wanted me to be. I'm not stuck in the society you experienced, you lived in. I'm in my own world, and I can embrace it. We need that. And of course, as in all of my work, we very much need to stop blaming everyone else. You know, you did take on stuff from your parents, but they took it on from their parents. So where does it end?
And going back to designing the blueprint, we ultimately asked for that, whatever that was.
We asked for the lessons.
The lessons.
We ask for the lessons, but we don't necessarily ask for having our nose rubbed in it. We don't have to do that karmically.
But sometimes that's part of the lesson.
It is.
Yes.
Sometimes, unfortunately, it's a tremendous habit of our species. We learn much more quickly when it hurts. But what I'm saying is there is another way. There's a way out. We could learn without it hurting. We could take the initiative. And it doesn't matter if we all get to that point right now or not, but what is important is that we at least recognize through my experiences, I am changing. And as I am changing, I'm contributing to the world changing. You know, I am not the victim.
I want to read something that was in chapter 1. We are now accelerating the emergence of a new human species with a genetic blueprint that will allow stellar travel and communication through a human body more replete with light frequencies and cosmic consciousness.
I have to talk to people. I have to mention that in every book, in every way, to say, hello, you're not only you in this little town, in this little village, but you are sourced in the cosmos. And that is the essence of spirituality, that there's a divine intelligence out there and you're a part of it. And what's happening in the world today, here we are in New Mexico, where we are building the first space station so that anybody who has money can go out to the edge of space. It's just like at the time of Columbus, you know, we're suddenly going to discover that not only is the world round, but that there's something out there in space. And it's going to influence our sense of God. It's going to influence our sense of human bodies. Are there others out there? There are. There are.
You familiar with Emanuel Swedenborg?
A little.
I forget which book he had written it in, but he was given the gift late in life to go visit the other dimensions and wherever he wanted to go. It was all opened up to him.
Yes.
So at one point, he went visiting planets in distant solar systems.
I've done it as well.
And he met these people,
Yes.
or met these spiritual beings,
Yes.
and they looked at him and go, "Oh, you must be an Earthman." And he goes, "Yeah," because we don't get many of you. There's only one other who's ever come out here like that. And I forget who it was now, too. I mean, it's been years since I read it. But I mean, it's what you're talking about.
Exactly, exactly. That we can be nourished by expanding our consciousness in such ways, and to realize, and it's very exciting right now because science is discovering that of course we're not alone. And for me, being a very practical person, how could we use that? How could we use contact? I am right now, Reverend Phil, courageously writing a little book called We Galactics, in which I really want to say to every man that we have that kind of galactic DNA, that we are a part of other species, of other worlds. And the only purpose of that is to use it. To use it.
And that's where you talk about the new world will not come to us.
That's right.
If we just sit here and wait, we'll be sitting and waiting for a long time.
A long time. Or what I think is very amusing is that the new worlds are penetrating us right now and we don't recognize them.
Elaborate on that.
Well, let me just say that from my perspective of, let's say, emotional, spiritual DNA, galactic DNA, that there are beings that are wandering around that we're talking to all the time who are very much a part of other planetary systems, other levels of consciousness. And, you know, I would say most children today have had at least one or two experiences, whether they were lights in their room or a UFO or something that's whispering to them to say, wake up, we are relating to you, you are relating to us. And so we want to look at each other in a different way. In the old days, the gurus would say, see God in each other. I think it's one of the most wonderful sentences there is. See God in each other. And I would also say, and look at each other and see who else is there. You know, is there a galactic there? Or is there an element of consciousness, a possibility of relating to someone who is not entrapped in an earth body? There is. Whether we can call that interspecies communication, you know, talk to your dog. You want to know what kind of winter it is? Talk to your horse. Talk to the ants. We could solve all of these terrible problems that have to do with hurricanes and tsunamis by expanding our awareness to include some of these kinds of things. And I really want to encourage humanity to do that, to realize that we are part of the solution, and that by being aware in a larger scope. Let me put it this way. What science says is that the breath of the first human is still circulating. What that means is that we can access that breath. You want to be an Einstein? You want to improve your math scores? This is what I did at my school. Imagine that you're connecting with the brain of Einstein. If you want to perform a miracle, you want to call the rain, as the Hopis did for 4,000 years, as we do every week at our church. Connect to that kind of consciousness, to something, a point of reference, whether it's your great-great-grandmother or it's a well-known historical being. Connect with that. Know that you have that genetic pool inside you. And you could suddenly discover that you have capabilities you never dreamed of.
Let's see if we can quantify that for a second. People are listening. They're hearing what you're saying. When you say believe it, are we talking about 100% belief? We talking about 10% belief?
No, you know, at my divinity school, we never use the word belief because it's too stilted in the outer mind. So what I would say is hold it as a possibility and imagine, not believe, imagine that it were possible and practice it. Life is about practice. We are here on this planet to practice evolution. So
act as if.
Act as if. Well said. Act as if it were true, and then see what your part is. All right, I am now meditating. We did this yesterday in Galisteo to call the rain. There are rain clouds in Galisteo today. Why should it not rain? Why should we not realize that because we focused there, we participated?
So let's go back to something you just said a little bit ago and flip this concept around. Without having that knowledge of my ability to impact the world I live on, the tsunamis, the earthquakes, the tornadoes and hurricanes, are they then reflecting back to us the energy we're putting into the planet?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's cosmic law. Every breath you take, every thought you have, every motion of your hand creates a ripple within this earth plane and beyond. And so it's important to realize that we can be aware of what we are doing, whether it's how we speak to our family or when we see on the television that, for example, somebody just killed Gaddafi, what happens to us? How do we use this? We need to realize that the war outside is the war inside, that the terrible dictatorship is going on inside us. Where is human compassion? So we need to pull away the veil of victim and it's not my fault and you guys are the bad guys, and instead begin to use the power of our awareness to direct ourselves to that. A tsunami may come. It may kill hundreds of thousands of people. What would be a psychogenetic reaction or response to that? To know that all these people have suddenly traumatically left their bodies. That is creating a pollution within our planet. Every human, every one of you watching that, if you have someone that just died or you're seeing something like a tsunami, you have the power to hold within your consciousness, may these beings be released from the astral. May their spirits rise into the light so that there is not this agitation that's going on the planet in all the species.
So it's about blessings as opposed to sorrow.
Use life.
I want to back up for a second. You made a comment about all these things that are happening. Are not they happening to teach us to get to that place of compassion, to see and understand that oneness?
A cosmic giggle would be to say, are we not creating that so we can learn from it?
Yes.
Yes, of course we are. Of course we are. What I'm saying is, of course, anything negative that happens, there is that expression, some good will come of it. The good that comes of it is that we learn from it, but we don't have to do it that way. I think it's very important. If you lose your job, if you lose your money, if someone dies around you, stop for a minute and say, what can I learn from this? How can I use this? As we say at the Light Institute, what is the gift? All of life is a gift.
Yes.
All of life is a gift.
If I'm willing to look for it, there's always a gift there.
There. And when you do, suddenly you're not the victim anymore. Suddenly you feel whole. Suddenly you feel, I can do something. I'm not entrapped here. And that's very important in the world today.
It's being done for me, not to me.
Yes. Or I am doing it, so how shall I wield it?
Yes.
How shall I use this in my life? Because we can. I learned this working with prisoners in the men's penitentiary in Bolivia. You may not be able to get yourself out. I witnessed a lot of torture and things there. But what struck me was nobody can ever touch your mind.
Mm-hmm.
You're always free to use your mind to shift how you see something. And when I worked with them and they began to perceive that, first of all, they stopped being tortured, which I thought was very interesting. Because they weren't sending out a signal through their psychogenetic body saying, oh yes, I'm available to be tortured. So the guards weren't tempted, weren't getting their kicks off by torturing them. Suddenly there was a shift that took place.
That is the energy of one being touching the other being.
It is.
Yes.
It is. And as we have said before, we are all one. There's very little difference between the torturer and the one being tortured. They have a relationship. And we can't wait for the other guy to change it. And this is true in family dynamics. This is true in global economics. It's true on all levels of life. It is for ourselves to shift it.
I want to quote another thing from that first chapter. Potential in the matrix for the evolution of soul and God, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Some people would want to ask the evolution of God, which I know happens to be a title of a book you wrote, but
yes.
You want to explain your understanding of the evolution of God.
I think that's very important because it influences our own evolution, our sense that we have the right or the freedom or the power to evolve. And I wrote the book, The Evolution of God, to simply point out that if we are changing so much, look at ourselves and the difference between now and 50 years ago, never mind your grandparents, then why do we hold God in a stilted way, who gave messages to people 2,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, that related to them? And not, let us reinvent, let us allow the evolution of our relationship to a divine source. Because I call God the divine source.
So let's explore that for a second, because what you're talking about really flies in the face of the Abrahamic traditions.
Yes. It doesn't have to.
I'm not saying it does, and I'm just saying it does. I mean, right here, right now, this moment, the Abrahamic traditions teach us that we are here to be judged by God, that there's a separation between us and God. There's a bridge we're never going to,
So I would say take
cross.
A deep breath. God is still there. You won't lose God, but look at the Abrahamic traditions and see what suits you. Do you really think that you should be punished? Do you really hold that Jesus the Christ died on the cross and that was the end of it? Of course you don't. Of course you don't. And so what we want to do is to let go of those old thought forms. They were written by various men hundreds of years apart who were living in tribes, who were controlling their tribe by saying, you be good or you'll be punished. Not by me, but by God. But there's still good things in their tradition. I'm not saying that we have to be in opposition to each other. Tell me a positive, a wonderful, inspirational teaching from the Abrahamic traditions.
Well, let's not even go there for a second. What I'm looking to see
Yes.
for you to share with the audience.
Yes.
What is our relationship to the divine? What is our purpose in that relationship?
Our purpose is intermingled with the evolution of God in that what I feel is cosmic law is that the unmanifest must take form. Must take form. That's why we have all the great prophets. That's why we have all of the leaders, the expressions of the divine, now, today, as in the past. Because if the divine, unmanifest, did not take form, the whole universe would collapse on itself. So you are the instrument of evolution of God.
Each one of us is an instrument.
Each one of us is. The experiences that you have, the enlightenment you have, and I've been with hundreds of people at the moment of their death, when they often become quite enlightened, at that last flicker, that last breath. What you learn, what you experience, feeds back into the unmanifest and alters the course of evolution of the cosmos. And that is the purpose of our lives. The purpose of our lives is the evolution of the soul.
The evolution of our soul and the evolution of God.
Same soul.
Same soul.
Same soul.
So as we grow, change, so does God grow and change.
That's right. As we have new experiences and new comprehension of the purpose of life, the meaning of life, the capacity to love, that ripples out across the cosmos and influences divine source to peel away limitation, to peel away you should be punished. That doesn't serve the evolution of God.
So now let's go back to this we are one. We are expanding this oneness.
Yes.
Not only to the people we come in contact with or don't, and not only the planet we live in, but
Thank you.
the entire everything.
That's right. Universe
So-
upon universe upon universe.
So whatever, to borrow a phrase from Jesus, what you do to the least of me, you do to me.
That's right.
And maybe that's what Jesus was teaching.
Yes. And what he was saying was, therefore, be kind to yourself. Be gentle to yourself. Because when you love yourself and you acknowledge that you are divine, you will see God in each other. You will see the divine. You will see past someone's terrible experiences, their terrible deeds, and you will see a divine being. It is always there.
So what you're asking us to do is let go of judgment.
Yes. And the way we let go of judgment, and because our religions, our societies, our survival techniques have all been based on judgment, it's very simple, actually, to let go of judgment. The way you do that is that you focus your consciousness to pull from another something perfect, something beautiful. And you hold that.
And that's seeing the divine in each one. That's the only perfect thing there is.
That's right.
So what we're here to do is to see God in everything.
Is to choose to see past, again,
The
if we
physical
can
and the
embrace that psychogenetically we are part of the cosmos, then we have to be able to see past our emotions, past our puny intellect, past our physical form, and recognize that these are all just transitory impressions that we are wielding, that we are using at this moment. And actually that can be very inspiring, that I want to say to the world. Don't think that whatever mistakes you've made or whatever is the truth of your life right now, that it's going to be the end. It is not. Everything changes, and that is to our benefit.
And if we are here to grow, to meet ourselves,
Yes.
and everything that we experience is geared towards that, then there are no mistakes.
That's right. Thank you. There are no mistakes because, as we were talking about earlier, every time you do something that hurts you, doesn't come out the way you wanted it to, or hurts another, you will learn from it, and you won't repeat it. You'll do it differently. And that's called evolution.
Or I could do it the same way and just expect a different result. It may not be what I'm doing is not the proper procedure. It's the
Whatever
expectations
proper
of
is.
what that's going to bring me that is messing up my ability to perceive it correctly.
That's right. And what that means is reality, as I've said in all my books, reality or truth is nothing more or less than what you experience. And that's why your truth could be different than my truth. Our truths could be different. And yet, we could find a way to learn from each other because our truths are different, and therefore each and both grow.
So I want to go back and play devil's advocate. How do we do that again? I don't want to lay it all at the feet of the Abrahamic traditions, but we have three major religions
Yes.
springing from the same individual,
Yes?
and they're constantly fighting with each other.
Yes.
So how do we learn to get past that? How do we as individuals
Well, I use technologies of consciousness.
explain what that means?
Technology of consciousness means, for example, you might ask yourself, what have I learned about one of those other religions? What is my thought form about the other religion? Who taught me that? Does it serve me to know them, to be one with them, to support each other's lives, or not? If it does not, where do I hold it in my body energetically? I will release it with light. So I would use techniques of dropping away those things that limit us. We have three major religions that are fighting with each other, but we have many other religions that are fighting, the Hindus and the Sufis and the this and the that and the other. They're all fighting with each other. Why? Because human consciousness, the emotional DNA, back to my psychogenetics, our emotional DNA back to the primordial times said, it's either me or you. It's survival. If you love me, you can't love him. And so if God loves me, God can't love you. And if God loves you, I'm going to kill you because I want to be loved. And those emotional imprints have traveled through 500,000 years.
This goes to chapter 2, Ancestral Chi, the mists of the past.
Yes.
And on page 19 you say, all that you experience will become your legacy.
That's right. Think of that what you experience becomes the genetic encoding of your great-great-grandchildren. And in fact, even if you never had children yourself, you would exude that out and influence other people who would then pass it down. And this is why traditional cultures are so focused on their ancestral chi. They even feel that they're stuck with their ancestral chi. If your great-grandfather did something negative, you had to pay the price. We still feel that a little bit. So what I'm saying is, let's clear away those imprints through our consciousness and balance them with what are the wonderful things that you might have inherited from your parents or your grandparents. For example, two of my great-grandfathers lived to be 100. I'll take that. I'll take that physical DNA from them, you know. What I will throw away from them is that one of them was a terrible bigot. He hated everybody who wasn't his own religion. Anything that's rubbed off on me, passing down that legacy from him, I reject. It doesn't serve my reality, my experience, and I will not pass it into the future.
You know, we're sitting here and we're talking. We're living in Santa Fe.
Yes. God's country.
That too.
Yes.
I don't know how many subscribers there are to Comcast and how many people will actually get to watch this show. Hopefully, a couple, and they'll be touched by it, and maybe and we're giving them the tools to facilitate the changes we're talking about.
Yes.
How do we reach the rest of the world? How does this message get spread?
Well, it's the 100th monkey on some levels. This is the time of communication, of information. And I would say that at the least we will touch 5,000 people here. Those 5,000 people will take a part of what we have talked about in and say, that's true for me. And then they will enact it. They will experience it. And that will affect their families, and it will ripple out. One of the things that I've learned being an author, Reverend Phil, is that none of us are the author of anything.
We're God's pen.
We are. We are. And so let it ripple out. Let it ripple out. Facebook, YouTube, 1,000 different ways. Heavens to Betsy. Jesus the Christ had 12 disciples. Look what happened.
Yeah, they all got it wrong.
They all got, but before they did, they all got it wrong. This is the basic truth of that. They couldn't see his light body. They couldn't embrace the exercise that he gave to them. But we can. We can 2,000 years later recognize scientifically that our body is made of light.
Yeah.
And so we have a lot to do with that light body that they couldn't do. We can perform miracles that he said, do it, do it, do it. And others. He was not the only one.
All this I do, so shall ye and greater.
So shall ye and greater.
Yes.
What's the greater? What can you imagine? We can imagine millions of people and have it be so.
I hope so. I want to, in the second chapter, there's 3 phrases, terms that you use I'd like you to define. The first one is chi, the second is infinite energy, and the other one is source is life.
Source is life?
Source is life.
Source is life.
The chi is the infinite energy that source is life. That's the phrase.
Okay, chi is the infinite energy that sources life. What that means is chi just means life force energy. But life force energy, because we're divine, because we are made of carbon atoms, because we're the same as our stars or our sun or or galactic beings that come here, or animals, or rocks. We have infinite source of potential that nourishes our bodies, that can give us the energy to create new ways of life. And so chi is simply an old expression describing life force energy. And that life force energy, chi is the life force energy, that supports life, that takes us away from the past and on into the future. If we looked at the laws of chi from a spiritual as well as a scientific perspective, we would recognize that in effect, we don't really have to go through this dying thing. And at the very least, please, in our lifetimes, let us stop dying of diseases and accidents and violence to our body. Let us say, I did a good job. I'm ready for the next project. I leave my body. Having had many death experiences, I always want the opportunity to say to people, use your chi. Use the power of your life force energy. Spread it around. Bring it in from the cosmos. Give it out to everybody you know, and live a good life.
Page 21. The powerful influence of ancestral chi whispers greatness or weakness down through the pathways of our possible realities.
That is psychogenetics. And so it could mean that you had a grandfather who had a physical ailment. That was a weakness, and it could be passed from you. You know, in Chinese medicine, we have a way, I'm an acupuncturist, or in my past, and we have a way of stimulating the ancestral chi so that only the powerful chi is passed to the fetus. Imagine that the Chinese understood this 4,000 years ago. And I just did this on someone recently to allow them to realize they will only take the legacy of powerful physical chi, emotional chi, spiritual chi. And so psychogenetics is a way of whispering to you, what is the best of your parents, of your family constellation, back into the dawn of history? What is the best? Our forefathers were strong. They had, in a way, many less emotional fears than we do today. So we could learn from them. Doing incarnational work, I'll often say to someone, how did you die? And I realized that in other time zones, people didn't die in fear the way they do today. They thought that death was natural. And so they didn't suffer the way they do today. We could use that chi. We could use that legacy. That's a strength that belongs to us in our emotional and spiritual DNA.
I come back to to how do we get this message out?
Yes.
I mean, you're talking about understandings that as a child, most children don't get.
That's right.
So they get the counter understandings.
Yes.
And so how are they going to get to this place?
Well, there's an up and down side to that. For example, I raised my children without television because there was too much negativity. On the other hand, look at all the movies today that talk about the heroes. I used to teach a course about heroes, you know. All these movies and TV things that talk about people with special gifts. I remember a long time ago when Uri Geller, he was...
the guy who bent the spoons.
Yes.
Yes.
From over there. And he said, watch me, I'll show you the power of the mind. Look at me, I can make this metal spoon bend. 1 million children rushed into the kitchen, grabbed the spoon, made it bend. That influenced them. And so we want to see it in our eyes. People have magical powers. Everyone is hungry for that in today's world. The next thing that we need to do is we need to practice. We need to imagine that we could do it. We need some more spoons.
You know, maybe I'm just being devil's advocate today, but when you talked about 1 million children rushing in, The first thought that comes to mind is, remember Soupy Sales?
No, I don't have television.
Oh, well, boy, back when Soupy Sales was like played at the noontime, the kids came home from school for lunch, and it was like this kiddie show.
Yes.
And he said, okay, kiddies, I want you to go into your daddy's wallet, take out the little green things and mail them to me. And that's the message they're getting. You know,
On the other hand, look at all the famous people today that are wielding economics differently, that are saying, I am fortunate. I want to help you to be fortunate. When I was in the Peace Corps, we had the heifer project, you know. You gave somebody, in my village, we gave them bunnies. And then when the bunnies had babies, they gave bunnies to someone else. And we had that pay it forward effect. And so I will always say, there are ways in which we can be inspired by each other and realize that we can be a part of the ripple outward. Soapy Sales got his, for sure.
I need to take a break. I got a couple of announcements I need to make. Then we'll come back. There's a couple of things I still want to touch on before we
Please do.
Before we end. Okay. Want to let you all know that this is public access television and you are the public. So I'd love to hear from you. Questions about things we're talking about, comments about things we're talking about. Maybe there's a show you'd like for me to do. Maybe there's a show you'd like to do with me. My contact information flashes on the screen. It also flashes at the rolls at the end of the closing credits. Feel free to contact me. I'd love to hear from you. Next week's guest is going to be Rebbe Meir Ben Moshe. We're going to pick up a conversation we had a few weeks ago on the Kabbalah. So tune in to get part 2 of that one. I also just want to let you all know that I am a spiritual counselor. I don't believe that we can solve our problems with the same instrument that creates our problems, which is our best thinking. That we need a spiritual component in order to heal. And I work with everybody in the belief structure they bring with them. I'm not here to convert you. I do not have a congregation. With God's grace, I hopefully never have one. That's just my... I know you love it.
I agree with you.
You know, and it's just this work that we can do on the spiritual level that heals us, and that's what I'm here to help with you with. I work on a donation basis, so if money is an issue, like it is for lots of people in these times, you know, don't let that get in the way. We can work it out. God takes care of me, whether it's through you or whether it's somebody else. So if you think I can help you, if there's a problem you think you need help with, again, contact me. I'd love to talk to you. Okay. We're back.
We're back.
2 things here. Page 22, spirits may linger in the lower levels of the astral dimensions. You want to explain that to people?
Mm-hmm. I think every religion has a conversation about what happens to you when you die. What happens to your spirit or your soul? I separate the two. People who
Define
die.
both of them.
The soul is the infinite one soul that allows for an individuation, a spark. Let's say a spark decides to incarnate. And when it individuates, then it creates this energy of spirit. The spirit has weight and measure. It has memory. It has all that you've inherited psychogenetically and all the lifetimes that you have lived. So spirit has personality. It has points of reference, whereas the soul is infinite. It is cosmic. But so when people die suddenly, whether it's a war or a tsunami or something like that, or even unresolved with their family. And this is very important because we often hold the spirit of somebody in our family that died because we were unresolved. And so they stay in levels that every religion has some name from, whether you call it purgatory, whether you call it the astral, I would call it the astral, where there's a consciousness that is still crystallized. and we still try to relate to that. Whereas what we want to do is to allow each person who has left their body to return to the one soul, to the cosmic energy, to be nourished infinitely rather than the limitations of our lessons or our perception of what is real. So in all of my books I talk about inheriting the best of that person, psychogenetics. For example, when I do funerals, I say, what is a quality that that person had that you always admired? You will now inherit that. And that will be the way that person lives on. So don't hold them. Don't try to feel that you must grieve them forever. Let them go. And let yourself take in the gift of their life with you and the legacy that they've passed to you, whatever that quality was. And so doing, you will grow faster, you will be happy, and you will allow the purpose of their life to continue to ripple down into the future.
Page 27. I just want to get through a couple of things. We're running out of time. That's why I'm
sorry.
No, don't be. I'm withholding comment because I just want to touch on some of these things. You talk about spin points in our body. Are we talking about chakras?
We could say that spin points have many dimensional points of reference. A spin point could have to do with the energy centers that we call chakras. They could be the energy centers which we call acupuncture points. They could be nerve synapse. When I'm talking about spin points, I'm usually talking on a spiritual level, which would be where is a spin point in your body that relates to some massive kind of point of reference. Maybe it's galactic DNA. Maybe it's some point of your emotional DNA that if you could open that spin point, as I talk about in the Psychogenetic book, open that spin point, a flood of new potential and energy could come into you. Now a spin point could be like a vortex. It could be something that's coming out of you as well. Because humans, the spirit of humans, the spirit of our hearts, is rippling out into the cosmos and attracting energies to us as well.
Which gives me the perfect segue. At the end of the chapter, page 32, you talk about ultimate destiny. You want to explain that?
Well, in a way, it's a misnomer, because what could be ultimate? If we have infinite lifetimes and the soul is beyond, way beyond time and space, then that would be, an infinite destiny would simply be, where could the consciousness, enfolding all of the psychogenetics of your own family tree, or as humans, or as our genetic encoding that has to do with the cosmos, what could it design for us? A destiny is a way of designing. It's a blueprint. So an infinite destiny, an infinite potential there would grow. It would evolve as we do. As we absorb, just like when we take food in and we digest it. When we digest this life, another will come. Destiny will expand.
If we're here to help the divine evolve,
yes,
and if the divine is infinite, then there are no ultimate destinies, because
not really.
So it's our ultimate destiny is an ongoing process.
Yes, and that's what I meant by that. Thank you. That's what I meant. It's an ongoing process. It's ever changing as we evolve, as we change through the experience, because we've come here to experience. So we needn't be afraid of our experiences. Our experiences will never kill us.
And even if they do, it's okay.
Death? What is death?
Well, that's the point. I don't want to go back to the Abrahamic traditions, but I will. Again, what you talked about with Jesus, is the misunderstanding of the message.
That's right. That's right.
That in some shape or form, that Jesus died for us and we're never going to be able to be okay.
Well, he didn't die for us,
yes,
so that for our sins. He did not die for our sins. He simply died like, look, Ma, no hands. He died to show us the next octave, light body, divine bliss, the blessings of consciousness, the miracles that we could perform. He just misdiagnosed, we might say, the level of consciousness of those around him. He thought they understood him, even his disciples. He showed them. And we are here to show as well. So each little thing that you do every day that could bring a smile to your lips, it says, well done, well done. That creates the future.
Two things.
Evolution.
Let's drop to this one. In all this discussion we've had today, is there really such a thing as a sin?
No, of course not. I think sin actually meant something that was against the tide of evolution. You know, it was a darkness, a misunderstanding, a confusion. We think of sin as a blot upon your soul. So there's no such thing as a blot upon your soul.
I mean, Casey used to say, sin is the use of the creative force for selfish purposes.
Yes, it's a good way of expressing that. But selfish purposes in themselves, you know, we can have compassion for that. Selfish purposes are only the misunderstanding of life and death.
They're lessons.
They're only the lessons.
Yes.
So there can be no mistakes, there can be no sin, there can be no selfishness.
And with that, I need to cut off and say thank you so much.
Oh, it's been my honor.
Likewise. Thank you. We'll do this again soon.
All right. We'll get through this book.
I think we've gotten through the book. You know, I mean, in terms of we can go chapter by chapter, but I really think we've captured it today.
I hope so.
I hope so, too.
Thank you.
Likewise. I want to thank you all for tuning in. The message has been constant on the show for over 2 years. You are divine. You get to create your own reality. Whatever you do, whatever you experience is brought to you to make you better, not to inflict itself upon you. So try to look at life a little differently. I'll try to end with this one saying. Your job is to act as if God was supposed to show up, couldn't make it, and asked you to take its place. What would that look like? So until next week, thank you all for tuning in. Walk in love and light and blessings. I'm Reverend Phil, and I've been your host for Words of the Prophets. Thank you for tuning in. Please join me again next week, same time, same channel, for more Words of the Prophets.